Hey everybody, it is Dak here from the Ed Boys, and welcome to my Don't Make Money with Low Combat guide. One of the more common money-making questions that I get is, how do I make money with mid to low level combat? In this discussion, I'll be focusing on what makes low level combat so bad for money making, and why you should just focus on XP at lower levels, not on GP. At the end, I'll discuss what I think the future of low-level money making should look like, and how to make money for gear if I don't suggest doing it through combat currently. First of all, what do I consider low level? For me, low level is somewhere like 50 and below. Mid level would be 50 to 70, maybe 80. 70 is a good threshold for a lot of high level requirements, but 80 plus is really much more of a high level than 70. Clearly it's higher than 70, but just the jump from 70 to 80 is pretty big. For combat, once you get to 70, you unlock Barrow's gear, which is generally very helpful, and you're able to equip some good weaponry like a whip, so you're not that far from tier 75, which is best in slot stuff. Usually when you're around 70, you're getting to that high level point, but there's a lot of high level monsters that you wouldn't kill very well if you just had base 70 stats. With low combat levels, you're going to be less accurate and you can't hit nearly as high, not only from your bad stats, but you can't wear very good gear either, so you're not getting any help on that end. With both of these working against you, this means that generally somebody who's only 40 combat is going to see less than half the kills as somebody with 80 combat. This is all depending on what you're fighting, of course, and maybe how good you are at whatever you're fighting, but in general, higher combat makes a big difference in how much money you're going to make on combat moneymakers. So for the majority of moneymakers in the game, the lower your level is, the less money you're going to make. It's very reasonable. Low combat moneymakers obviously work just like this, with low monsters having worse loot than high monsters. Having higher levels will not only allow you to fight stronger monsters, but even if you were to go back and fight some of those low level ones, you're going to be killing them a whole lot faster, turning a bad low level method into a decent mid to high level method. This is another reason that low-level moneymakers are slow in the first place. If you only needed, say, 40 combat to make about a mil an hour, that means you could make 3 or 4 mil plus if you were max combat, which is generally more than any other PVM moneymaker in the game, so it would clearly be OP. This is an unfortunate truth for any low-level combat money-making methods, and I'll discuss that a little bit more at the end. Even if you're alright with making some slow cash, there's not nearly as many options for low-level moneymakers as there are for high-level moneymakers. I recently had Chaos Druids on my top 10 low requirement money making list. It was mostly on there because they're super easy to kill and they will make some decent cash for new accounts. The XP isn't a terrible waste of time, but it really isn't the best option. It's still not going to make you more than like 100k an hour with fairly high levels, and that gives it a pretty low ceiling, so it's unlikely that you want to spend a lot of hours in this grind. We can move on to Blue Dragons. It's not a bad mid-level option. You can safe spot them, so technically you don't need very high stats to kill them, but with only 50 range, if you're safe spotting a kill, it's going to be really slow. Plus, if you don't have 70 agility, then you have a long run to get to the Blue Dragons, which makes it even slower if you don't have good levels. Plus, they don't have a bunch of crazy drops. They really just drop those dragon bones and blue dragon hides, so it's really consistent money, but it's not going to be a lot of money per hour. Again, you have a pretty low ceiling. With low stats, though, you're not really going to get much XP, and it's far easier to make more money somewhere else. Barrows is basically the lowest level good moneymaker, though the term good all really depends on how much money you currently have or how much money you currently need. With 75 magic and range, Barrows is fairly quick, but we're getting close to that high level requirement, and realistically, if you want fast kills, you need even better stats and pretty good gear. So I'm not really sure I could say this is good for mid to low levels. It's kind of close, but this is clearly not a low level moneymaker. On the other hand, if we're looking at high level moneymakers, there's actually tons of options to work with. We have Vorkath, Zora, there's 6 different Slayer bosses, 7 or so Wildy bosses. God War's dungeon has 4 different bosses. We have Raids, Theater of Blood, KBD, the Giant Mole, Sarachnis. These are just bosses that we're talking about. Not every good PVM moneymaker has to be a boss, though they are my personal favorite. You not only have a lot of options, but they all make a lot more money than all of your lower level options, so you can quickly make up for the time that you spent training your stats rather than making money. It is worth mentioning that if you train your combat without doing any Slayer, then you're not going to be able to do many of the good moneymakers. If you wait until you have mid-level stats to do your Slayer, then the early Slayer levels are going to be much faster though. Early Slayer gains are way worse than high-level Slayer. In fact, they are pretty boring, so it is nice to maybe get a bit of a bonus in terms of speed on those early Slayer levels. You shouldn't ignore Slayer completely though, just to get fast XP. High-level PVM is way more exciting than low-level moneymakers too. Not only are the fights a lot more interactive, unless maybe we're talking about the Kraken, but the loot system is more fun too. Blue Dragons occasionally drop an Ensouled Dragon Head, which is basically the most money you're going to get in one kill. It's always nice to spot one, but it's really not a huge deal overall. When you're bossing, there's often really big drops involved, especially if we're talking about corp or even raids. Plus, most bosses have pets, which of course are only cosmetic, but for some folks like myself, these are the main reason to grind out a boss. With the opportunity to get a huge drop or even a pet on every kill, and there's higher risk than low-level combat and more interaction going on, each boss kill is a lot more thrilling than just killing like a Chaos Druid. One question that does rise up here is, do we need more low-level combat moneymakers? First of all, Jagex has put in some effort recently to give us lower-level options. Obor and Briofita both being a free-to-play boss that doesn't really require much to kill. You can't make a ton of money per hour since you have to grind the keys, but it does give more players access to bossing activities. Grotesque Guardians and Seracnus were added to be mid-level bossing, and in general they're pretty good for mid-level bossing. For anyone who's just beginning on how to fight a boss, those are good options, but you still don't want to do them with low-level stats. They're definitely not low-level moneymakers in general, and as I mentioned earlier, if they were low-level methods and they made a lot of money, that means higher-level players could basically just abuse these methods. I think it's good for the game to have more options for lower-level moneymakers, but I think it's important for low-combat moneymakers to continue to make low amounts of money, of course. This is kind of a topic that could come up with any possible update, and that is balance. If they added new monsters for lower-level players, we could discuss what items should they drop, how much money per hour are we trying to average with them, will they have any uniques, what will those uniques do, will they be OP items, or will they be useless and not worth any money? These are all pretty difficult to balance. They need to be able to make it viable to kill as a lower player and still make decent cash, otherwise people are going to complain and not do it. But also, it shouldn't be so easy and profitable that somebody with a T-bow or a scythe can make bank off of it. It may not bother you that much if somebody else is getting rich when you're making more money than you were before, which on the surface is a good thing. You shouldn't be focused on how much money everyone else is making. But if a new lower level monster were dropping supplies like herbs, food, logs, ores, and whatnot, then higher level players can grind that out really quickly, adding a lot of those items to the game, slowly destroying the prices of those things. That would not only be bad for the new moneymaker, but any other existing money-making methods that involve those items would be affected by it too. So it can't just make low-level monsters that happen to drop really expensive supplies just to help out with low-level players. It's going to unbalance a lot of things. Low-level players do need options too, but realistically, A, you should be willing to train your stats if you want to make more money, and B, if you do spend a lot of time on low-level methods, you're going to be gaining levels and be ready for high-level stuff eventually. This means that low-level methods basically become obsolete in the long run. This doesn't happen with high-level stuff since you're maxing out at 99. Once you get to the toughest boss, that's what you grind out now. That is your life. Once you get high enough levels that you can go fight Zora or Vorkath, you're probably not going to want to go back to Blue Dragons. You can make money for gear through the power of low-level combat if you really wanted to. Clearly it's possible to make the money, but you're not going to make as much money. Low-level gear is generally very cheap too, so I guess you don't need very much money at first. Often, even in my own guides, it's not suggested to make money with low combat, but then suddenly, when it's time to do high-level stuff, you're expected to have a bunch of high-tier gear. There are a lot of other money-making options out there that are going to make more money than combat with less requirements. I do have some money-making guides that I will have linked in the description, including a top 10 low-requirement moneymaker list. When choosing a moneymaker, it's easy for me to tell you to just go to the blast furnace or enchant jewelry really early on, but the key is you gotta try out a few methods that you think look interesting and find one that you actually like to do. If you hate a moneymaker, but it makes a lot of money per hour, you're still likely to not do it for very long. You might as well choose a method that you enjoy, right? I suggest for anybody who only wants to do combat, maybe not any skilling life, then you should grind out Slayer ASAP. Low-level Slayer is not going to make you a lot of money, but it will make enough to buy food, potions, and low-level gear. By the time you get to the higher combat levels through Slayer, you're going to be unlocking Slayer assignments that will actually make a lot of money, and you can use those to buy higher tier gear. Also keep in mind, things like Barrow's gear and a whip is considered high tier gear, and it isn't that expensive. Just because someone says you should have primordial boots, bandos, and a bludgeon to go fight something doesn't mean you have to have those items. It just means that higher tier gear is going to be better. You can still fight bosses and higher tier monsters with mid-level gear, but it'll be slower. So to go over the main points here, if you want to make more money than you're making currently, especially with combat, you should assume that training your stats will be in order. Money can be made with low-level combat, but it's much more worth your time in the long run to get fast XP until mid to high levels, then fight higher level monsters. When it comes down to it, you can fight whatever you want to fight, but obviously, if you're looking to make a lot of GP, then there are better ways to go about it. So how seriously you take my advice here is kind of up to you. You, again, can fight whatever you want. You can still make money fighting low-level stuff. I just personally don't suggest it. And if you're trying to make money a little bit faster, that's not the way to do it. I think that is going to wrap up this video, everybody. I believe that's everything I wanted to talk about when it comes to low-level combat moneymakers. This is a discussion video, and so far has been very one-sided because it's just me ranting at you, which means if you have anything to say about low-level combat moneymakers, where it is now and where you think it should be headed in the future, be sure to leave those in the comments section below so we can continue the discussion. If you enjoyed the video or you just got some useful information out of it, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. I do stream on Twitch, I am on Twitter, and I have a Discord, which all links are in the description. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed, and best of luck with your money-making grind.